The ruling class is openly admitting that they have group chats filled with elites so they can coordinate their message to manipulate the masses. Semaphore just did a story exposing how the capitalist class talk to each other in secret using signal chats in order to get the people they want elected and push for policy. So essentially, there's a small group of billionaire elites, almost like a capitalist cabal, that are secretly calling the shots behind the scenes. So the tankies and the conspiracy theorists was right once again. Notice how the capitalist class are willing to unite in order to accomplish their agenda, while they got the working class fighting and canceling each other over irrelevant culture war issues. Meanwhile, as Semaphore laid out, these billionaires and these oligarchs get together despite probably small disagreements because their number one priority is to defeat the left. The capitalists and the oligarchs are getting together in order to plan and strategize their class warfare against the working class. Unfortunately, we only have one screenshot from these group chats, the one that Semaphore was comfortable with releasing, I guess, but it is still very hilarious. Here you see David Sachs having a complete meltdown because his oligarch group chat is a little bit too critical of Donald Trump. He accuses the group of Trump derangement syndrome, floats the idea of a new group, and then leaves. But it is interesting who is also part of the group chat who left with him because of the criticism of Donald Trump. Is that Tucker Carlson? Isn't it funny that Tucker Carlson pretends that he's someone who is against the elites? Meanwhile, he is in private group chats, rubbing elbows with them while propping up Zionist billionaires. Remember, guys, it's one giant club and you are not part of it.
And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later because they own this fucking place. It's a big club and you ain't in it.
What's poppin'? My friends, my family, welcome. Welcome to RBN Live. Nick in the evening? No, Nick at prime time. Welcome to Nick at prime time. Very rare prime time live from your boy. But we had a great guest. We have Li Jingjing from China, who will be joining us on top of the hour. With Chinese journalists, I usually got to do the show late at night, in the evening, or sometime in the morning. So thank God we was able to do it prime time. We don't do prime time shows that often, but I had to at least start the show off pretty powerful. This is the hotspot I always shoot. You guys know I'm always in the lab cooking, as I always say. And I came across a story, and we immediately decided to cover this. I need to pull up the original article as well. But they openly discussing the facts and the way that Semaphore reports this, because they're the one who broke the story. And then there are a lot of other coverage of this on like print media. You don't see a lot on video media. Here's the original story: the group chats that changed America. And essentially, this article is a very long article explaining how many of the big tech, right-wing capitalist bros was whining and dining with many of the MAGA capitalists as well. So they went to game plan how a way to implement their agenda of no regulation, of getting politicians they want. Pretty much, this is the deep state cabal that the conspiracy theorists has been telling you about. And if you don't have class consciousness, you would think people that are involved on this are on your side, like Tucker Carlson. That doesn't surprise me. This is a group chat where they can game plan class warfare against the working class, game plan for imperialism, the game plan for Zionism. What's wild, because if you read this article, it's a very long article. We're not going to go all the way through it. The liberal take on this is like, man, isn't it crazy how the right-wing tech bros hooked up with some people in MAGA and it led to Trump victory? That's a shame, man. We need to adjust in the Democratic Party. We need our tech oligarchs. We need our billionaire group chats. I was seeing the way that, like, the corporate media and the liberal media was covering this story. And that was their take. Like, man, Democrats, we need to get our secret cabal of capitalists. Which they definitely already do. This was under Biden. This is what they're doing to this day. Yeah, we got Lee Jingjing. She does great international reporting. I already know a lot of you guys are gonna watch it on replay. I try not to stream same time as Savvy, but we had a great guest today, so I decided to do a primetime episode. U.S. billionaires joined WhatsApp group to change Israel narrative. You guys notice how the ruling class, the capitalist class, they have militant class solidarity. They had the media press correspondence dinner. Wonder if I can find it. Correspondence dinner. You had the CNN host, the right wing person, Scott Jennings. He had these arguments with Abby Phillip, who was supposed to be like the liberal, and they had all these like clips of them going at it, and they're supposed to be passionate. And the kayfabe is they don't like each other. Meanwhile, they rubbing elbows at the press, cringe award bullshit. It's all a game. They play these culture war games, and it's like a disagreement with them socially, but they don't take it to heart. Not like the working class do, that is quick to allow the ruling class to distract them with bullshit culture war issues. As Donald Trump increased the police state, as we had trillion stolen from the top 1% from the working class last year. We see in a historic transfer of wealth that is not even serfdom in a lot of ways, because serfs, they got vacation days. They provided health care to their serfs. They often have bread lines for their serfs. So we're almost like beyond the level of serfdom at this point. And everything they want to accuse other countries like China and Russia of being this authoritarian, militarized hellhole is exactly what we are. We are the definition of a capitalist, authoritarian police state. Once again, this is something that they cover in the mainstream media. I don't even have to pull up like left-wing radical journalism. This is from the Washington Post. And they just talk about like, oh, isn't it crazy that we got billionaires getting together? Oh yeah, it's great, man. It's great. The billionaire class, they get together, they plan stuff, they plan messages. That's how they talk about this like it's cool. Like, oh my God, it's crazy that they do this. Isn't it cool that the billionaire class are actually close together and friends? Like Tucker Carlson. In that screenshot where I explained it in my hotspot video, and it's so cartoonish. I thought it was fake at first, because I guess a lot of these capitalists, they was turning on Donald Trump because his absurd tariff strategy. That's the only thing they really have against him. Here, I'll get back to this headline soon. Here, David Sachs. This group has become worthless since the loudest voices have Trump derangement syndrome. And it's a shame because they're on Signal, they had their messages deleted, so they didn't have a lot of screenshots. This is the one they decided to leak, though. I'm very upset that this is the only one they wanted to leak. Obviously, Semaphore, they happy with showing Republicans turning on Trump. I would love to see like a full extended conversation, but that's not available because it was deleted. And this is the only screenshot that Semaphore want to show. Because it's the narrative that liberals want to get out there that people on the right is leaving Trump. David Sack is upset. He said his group has become Trump derangement syndrome. He asked this guy to create another one with smart people. Brian Goldberg, I don't know who that is. I should Google that. He said, I'm not sure we have Trump derangement syndrome. I think we Republicans who supported Trump are seeing that this is a failed administration. And then Tucker Carlson immediately left the group. Tucker Carlson's like, don't you dare criticize Trump. See, guys, this is shady as fuck. You guys already know how I feel about Tucker Carlson. Never trusted the guy. You can't trust someone who is an anti-communist class warrior for the ruling class. He's having these private group chats. He hates on China. He hates on any other country who rejects his central planning model. And he pushes the culture war to distract the masses and convince poor white people to vote for the Republican Party. Very nefarious guy. He's allowed to go against the Ukraine narrative. It's okay if he challenges them on Ukraine because they have Bernie Sanders and AOC who will support Ukraine. So that helps their narrative. That helps their narrative that the people on the right, they're the one who speaks out against the wars. Meanwhile, if you're a respectable person in politics, you're supposed to support the Ukraine war. Don't you know what Tucker Carlson said about it? Guys, that's why they allow him to. That's why they allow him to speak out against it. That's exactly why. So how can you claim to be anti-war like Tucker Carlson, but he says he loved Israel? Now I've seen him critical of the Israeli state, but he said he loves Israel. He condemns what he calls barbaric Islamist terrorism, which is the resistance, essentially. A Western imperialist at its core. So, as I said many times before, I never understood the hype. There have been so many red flags from this guy. Once again, I would never join your side if you're a police state enthusiast. Because people like Tucker Carlson and people on the right, they claim that, and they unapologetically are American exceptionalists because they claim that we are supposed to be a land of freedom. Meanwhile, they were cheering on the building of cop cities. They cheer when police execute people. And their excuse for cheering for the death of George Floyd, who they still won't let rest in peace, they will say, oh, don't you know he was on drugs? So their position is if you're on drugs, you deserve to die by the police. They support the occupation of the police, the use of civil asset forfeiture. They're like, these people will always be our enemies. They're building a Zionist police state as we speak right now with Donald Trump passing executive orders. I'm going to show you. He signed an executive order right now, today, that span the police state, but we're going to get to that here very soon. That goes to this. We are seeing the formation, especially as the Zionist regime lose support, especially as the ruling class lose support. We're seeing the facade of freedom and the allowing of dissent. That was only available if we went along with them. Now they're seeing a lot of people protest the Zionist regime, protest the capitalist class. And now they was terrified after we protested the police state in 2020, directly challenged their power. I explained before, a lot of people advocate for armed revolution. A lot of people advocate for self-defense against government tyranny. But we can't even begin to have the conversation about armed revolution as they're building a police state that surpasses other countries' military budgets, guys. Like, can we get serious? So the first step in order for us to advocate for revolution is to decrease the amount of power that the capitalist class have, to decrease their militia, to decrease the corruption and pretty much the armed puppets of the capitalist class. Try to do a revolution before you do that. You better be really, really heavily armed, which we are not as an organized working class yet. Or you got to have an amazing general, amazing strategy, and it will still be a bloodbath. That's why they will always be our class enemies. Because I had this headline up for a while. Let me read it. I got plenty of the show. We had Li Jingjing join on top of the hour. Business titans privately urged New York Mayor Eric Adams to use police on Colombian protesters. So the people who was protesting simply for their school to divest from Israel, you have a cabal of capitalists. They will call you a conspiracy theorist. I was called a conspiracy theorist my entire life. Marxists are considered conspiracy theorists because we are laying out directly what we see. Look how they describe, oh my God, just business titans getting together organically. No, this is the capitalist cabal that we warned you guys about. This is why if you don't have class consciousness, you don't even know who your enemy is. You're over here railing about the globalists, thinking that Tucker Carlson is on your side. Many of these people complain about the globalists while they're supporting Donald Trump, the biggest globalist cuck in the world. That happens when you're confused and you have no class consciousness. The reality is this is a capitalist, oligarchy, Zionist, genocidal cabal operating in our society. And if you call it out, they're like, oh my God, you're being conspiratorial. Oh, you spreading Russian propaganda. This is what they accuse our enemies of doing. They say that Putin has this oligarch class. The oligarch is under the thumb of Putin, as if it's a bad thing that the capitalists are controlled and not stronger than the government. Meanwhile, this is exactly what we have here. There's nothing that you can show me in China that matches this, not even close. Can you imagine? They have massive crackdown on journalism, which we've seen in the United States, massive crackdown on freedom of speech, like we've seen in the United States. And this is what Donald Trump signed today. I think he officially signed today, or maybe it was yesterday. This is an executive order. And remember, guys, I told you guys Doge was a fraud from the beginning. Everyone was pretending, oh my God, Elon Musk taking over the government. No, the fuck he's not. You guys getting fake ass analysis from other channels, like the breaking points out there. They're getting you fake ass analysis. There's no Doge. Congress controls spending. Everything that Elon Musk is doing is what the ruling class wants him to do. But if you look at the spending report, he hasn't decreased government spending. It is all a show that people fall for. So as they're saying they're going to decrease the size of government, they are refusing to audit the Pentagon. They're refusing to cut the military budget. And now they're going to expand our bloated police budgets, which spend more than other countries do on their military. So they say we're going to have those to increase government efficiency. And now they're going to give it to the most inefficient organizations known to man, known as American police. You know how I know it's inefficient? Because we're spending all this money on the police and white people still tell me they're scared. New York City spends 3 times more on their military budget than North Korea does. Meanwhile, white people still tell you, oh my God, I feel afraid. I feel unsafe. Isn't that proof that our system is inefficient? If you will rank our police system similar to how you will rank the militaries around the world, you guys understand that United States police will be the 3rd leading military in the world. The only country that will have a larger military than the United States police is China. Meanwhile, a bunch of cowards in the United States left, they are afraid to have the fiscal conversation. They're afraid to discuss and defund the police and discussing the fiscal arguments against conservatives, people who claim they are supposed to be against small government. This argument is a layup for us. And you got a lot of people who are afraid to make this argument. Libertarians are supposed to be against the police state. They're frauds. They're fraudulent as well. Every single libertarian that voted for Donald Trump. Because this is what, and obviously you're never supposed to pay attention to the title. Look, to pursue criminals and protect innocent civilians. Except the instance, the people that cops steal money from via civil asset forfeiture, which just costs people money and is literally around 90% of the time when people challenge civil asset forfeiture, they win. The goal of the police is to take advantage of people who cannot fight back and they steal their wealth. And even if they do get their wealth back, they spend money through court fees. It's a regressive way of stealing wealth by the ruling class, by the police state. And Americans think that shit is normal. But this is what the executive order actually say as you pretend to protect innocence. as Donald Trump is saying that he's going to decrease the size of government, he is going to increase the pay and benefits of law enforcement officers. Guys, the police takes around 50% of cities' municipal budgets. Cops are well accommodated. I got to fact check myself. I think the average cop in New York City, NYPD police officer, they make around $250,000 a year. In Kansas City, the starting salary for a KCPD is around $80,000. $80,000 is a lot of money where I live. I live in a low. That's how I'm able to do what I do. By the way, I live in the Midwest, a very low cost of living area. No way I'll be able to live in fucking New York and LA and shit, right? So if you're making like 80 grand in Missouri, you're doing pretty well. And actually, I think I might be understating. Let me fact check myself here. Let me see. KCPD salary. They tell you? Yeah, so it starts at 70,000. So it starts 70,000. Police officers do pretty damn well for themselves, man. Remember, 50% of American workers make $35,000 or less. Something they never talk about. 50% of workers make $35,000 or less, and you got police starting at 70,000. Then once you get promotions, benefits, raises, they easily clear 100K. But Donald Trump is like, we need to pay them more. As he mass firing a ton of other federal workers, which once again, I'm pretty neutral on that because I'm for efficiency. Like Marxists, we are the efficient ones. Capitalists is the ways. But isn't that incoherent that you find all these other people while you're spending police state? But look at this. This is what also is horrific. Because look, strengthen and expand legal protections for law enforcement officers. As if they don't have enough as it is already. So Donald Trump is going to make it easier for police officers to kill people, to plant evidence, to engage in fraudulent, violent activity. You have millions, untold millions of dollars that's spent from the taxpayer money from payouts from lawsuits because of police officers. You have police officers that get caught sexually assaulting female people that were females and women, and then the city, they got to pay the lawsuit. They got to pay taxpayer money to settle for them. But Trump want to make it easier for police. This is what they're focused on right now. So you have the capitalist class teaming up with Zionists in order to crack down on dissent, create bullshit anti-Semitism laws to make it illegal to protest against genocide and the Zionist regime. And then as you crack down against free speech, as you crack down against dissent, you then expand the police state. You get the police more ability to engage in violent actions. And what they're also doing, they're also building prisons. So another thing is they want to invest more into prisons, security systems. I thought Donald Trump was planning to cut government. They don't. That was never the plan. It was to impose regressive taxes and fees on the working class while spending the police state to crack down on dissent that is coming. Meanwhile, you have shit libs, and you guys know I can't fucking stand this guy. No one can. They talking about Trump's police state, Trump's border policies, even though he's deported less people than Biden. Look, this is what they fucking say. This is people like Mehdi Hassan have the fucking nerve to say. We are almost officially in North Korea. Don't you guys know we're almost like the fucking Asians? Donald Trump is making us like the fucking Asians. The amount of xenophobia and propaganda that is hit by people who are considered progressive and on the left by the mainstream. You guys see how the progressives always spread this bullshit against North Korea? And JB, you guys know our brother JB Fine. He been doing amazing work on foreign policy. He did a great show about North Korea on his channel. It's very informative. He had an expert that joined them. They discussed North Korea. Like everything they've been told, everything you've been told about North Korea in the West is bullshit. We talk about this on the show all the time. But you guys see the instinct of Mehdi Hassan is immediately they project the flaws of our country and then use it to smear North Korea. What are we? What do you think we are? The filthy Asians? No, this is the United States. You know, the country that imprisons more people than any other country, including North Korea and China? Then New York spends 3 times more on their police than North Korea does on their military. Meanwhile, shit libs like Mehdi Hassan is still fear-mongering about North Korea. This is what JB says. The U.S. lied to us about Russia. They lied to us about China. They lied to us about Haiti. They lied to us about Venezuela. Lied to us about Libya. Lied to us about Vietnam. Lied to us about Iran. Lied to us about Palestine. Lied to us about Cuba. But you actually believe them on North Korea? Yes, that's what social democrats do. They will admit that the United States lied in the past, but they will always buy the current war the same way that Mehdi Hassan supported the Ukraine war. It hurts my soul that people like this have credibility. And look at JB slaying these motherfuckers. Guys, I told you guys, JB is the most slept on person on YouTube easily. I wish I remember the name, but he had a great show. Actually, I have it in my receipts here. Here's another one. Julia, there we go. I was trying to make sure I got her name. He interviewed Julia, an expert on North Korea. That was a very great episode by JB, by the way. And if you talk to anyone who's been in North Korea, if you talk to anyone of these experts who are not paid by the CIA, and many journalists who went to North Korea, they say everything you were told by North Korea is bullshit. They provide housing. They provide health care to their people. They have clean cities. Whenever they have surplus food, like whenever they have extra peaches, because they grow a lot of peaches, whenever their farmers have a great yield, they give away food for free. Once again, we have a larger percentage of our people in prison than North Korea does. And then MAGA and Trump and the right wing, they like, we don't believe in immigration. We don't believe that you should be able to cross borders. You should stay in your own country. Then they criticize North Korea for their immigration policies. They're like, why don't they let North Koreans leave? Motherfucker, I thought you guys was against immigration. Anyway, considering the paths that North Korea has been through with the United States and the West slaughtering their people, the West killed 2 million Koreans in a gross violation of their sovereignty because they chose a different economic model than them. They killed and tortured their people, burned them alive, burned their cities down. The West did a heinous crime against North Korea. Then they lost. They was unable to root communism off the peninsula. Then they decided to sanction them and starve the country as retaliation because they lost a war. And then dumb dipshits like Mehdi Hassan and Hassan Piker and many Americans believe that North Korea are the bad guys. Hey, don't you know that North Korea is testing nuclear weapons? Motherfucker, we used a nuclear weapon. North Korea getting a nuclear weapon was the best decision they ever made, because if they didn't do that, you would have the Kim family. They would have been Gaddafi a long time ago. And that's why they hate them for it. The best thing they ever did was to get a nuke, the same way Iran should have got a nuke a long time ago. The West get upset when other countries get nukes because that's deterrent against their aggressive actions. The only reason why they haven't carpet bombed North Korea, the only reason they haven't taken out because they nuclearized. But we're supposed to hate them. Here's Hassan Piker. Once again, there's a reason why you had the New York Times giving Hassan Piker a fucking tongue bath glowing article review. Wonder if I can find it. The fact that the left listened to this guy, the fact that this guy is thousands of times more influential than I am, is exactly why we're fucked. Can North Korea be saved? You see how if you're going along with the CIA narratives about the United States enemies, they don't care if you advocate for your bullshit, weak social democrat policies. They don't care if you criticize their politicians every once in a while, as long as you don't humanize our enemies. Like these are the same people that say that Putin is a violent thug. They love Ukraine and hate Putin, even though Putin provides people health care. They have union rights, pay maternity leave. And Ukraine is a fascist state where you're not allowed to collectively bargain, where they ban socialist parties. Meanwhile, social democrats like Hassan Piker, TYT, Cenk Uygur, they hate Russia, but they love the social democrat fascists while they hating on North Korea. Here, Julia, bitch out to her. Saved by who? The country that killed off 20% of their whole population? The countries that collaborated to sanction and starve them? North Korea saved itself. They did save themselves. And this is why the people support the government, because they seen the Kim family, they seen the government fighting against Western imperialism instead of selling their people out. And North Koreans, well, despite what Americans want to think about their enemies, they're smart. They know who's responsible for their economic downturn and misery. It's the West and their aggressive sanctions. That leads them to rally behind their leaders that is fighting against Western aggression. The same way anyone would. Instead of a sellout like Jolani in Syria, who's begging Israel to love him, even though Israel invaded their country. You have Japan, the country that was nuked by the United States, one of the most grotesque war crimes in human history, hundreds of thousands of innocents dead, when that shouldn't have happened. Now Japan is a client state. There are people who are an embarrassed people. I kind of went off a tangent there. But this is oh my God, this shit made me want to fucking vomit, bro. Y'all see the fucking puff piece they did about Hassan? As they got us on blacklist, whenever they do talk about this, that we extremely radical, unreliable, progressive mind and a MAGA body. Hassan Piper's pumps iron, likes for weapons, and wear pearls. His brand of masculinity has won him many fans online and has been a useful vehicle for his politics. This motherfucker has the nerve to call other people feds. He has the nerve to attack us. He has the nerve to attack the ACP. He has the nerve to attack other people and accuse them of being feds as he is propped up by the algorithm and as he got the New York Times doing puff pieces on him. Imagine being fucking complimented by Zionists instead of them hating your guts. But we will have Lee hopefully join us here at the top of the hour. We still have another like 10 minutes. I at least start out with a rant therapy session. Nick, half of the United States is on drugs, or I think they're supposed to say painkillers. Yeah, I shared a graph on my Twitter. I'm glad. I'm always dropping bangers on X. I had a tweet that went viral where I shared the stats of the amount of Americans who are on antidepressants and how much it increased. And it's wild that they managed to convince people that shit's normal. They have a broken society, a broken populace that they got to keep in order with a police state. And the only way that so many people can function if they go on antidepressants. I'm sure that there are some medical conditions that go on with some people, but if they want to convince me that somehow the United States and their people are just so happen to have the most amount of people who have broken brains, if it's about chemical imbalances, why is the United States more depressed than much poorer countries? There are indigenous societies, there are countries in the global south, poorer countries, that are way happier than the United States. So what they sold you guys has always been bullshit. What is making people who live on this soil in the United States have a unique brain chemistry where people are depressed more likely than other countries? It's like the United States and France. And now there are studies that show that the whole theory of chemical imbalances, it was always bullshit. So they convinced many people to get on painkillers and depressants and drug their body up. And guys, there's got to be obviously I'm not judging anyone for this, guys. I'm blaming society. I'm a Marxist. I don't blame the individual. I'm not blame because some people get very emotional, get upset when I talk about this. But I'm not blaming the individual. This is the problem with society. Doctors like prescribe this shit to people young, early, get them addicted, tell them they can't exist without it. They don't even suggest doing some exercise first. I'm always the most depressed when I'm a little heavy. You know what I mean? I'm trying to work on getting back in shape now. When I'm in shape, when I'm down, when I'm healthy, you feel better. When you're on the ball, you feel better. Like this whole thing where they prescribing people with these fucking bullshit antidepressants and telling them there's something wrong with them. Modern mental health is a fucking gaslighting scheme for the capitalist class. Something wrong with you. There's something wrong with you, not the ruling class. Anyway, thank you for super chat. You started another rant. Thank you for $2, Nadia. Needed option for China. I think that's a poll. I appreciate. I need to check out the poll result. Needed option for China is best praise mail. Thank you for the super chat. I'm gonna cover quickly. Let's see how much time do I have? Oh Jesus. Oh yeah, I'm gonna cover quickly before Lee gets here. I was about to say bombshell, but not a bombshell because we already knew about it. We're covering how you had Israel that openly admitting and they bragging about how Biden didn't do a damn thing to stop the genocide in Israel. That's why people like AOC and many progressives who advocated for voting for Kamala Harris, saying that she will be better than Trump, which I think they would be the same. That was always nonsense because you had an Israeli government that is praising Biden for how he handled it. So we uncover the story, but this is why they're building the police state. Getting back on task here. The reason why they're building this police state is because what Israel is doing. It will take 2 hours to go over all the war crimes. They are ramping up their assault. They're using starvation as a tool of war. Anyone who defends these people, anyone who is on the same side of these people, they are purely demonic. Like there is no breaking bread with these people. There's no going back to normal with these people. This is why Bernie Sanders, this is why AOC, that's why Cenk with his new pack, that's why anyone who advocating being part of this duopoly, supporting Trump. If you follow me on X, I've been ratioing Zionists left and right. There's no going back to normal after this. After what Israel has done. Now you have the idea of attacking hospitals like the United States just did in Yemen again. You have India that is holding water supplies against Pakistan because of their conflict, which we will dive into on RBN here very soon. But the reason why India is allowed to get away with what will be considered a crazy war crime before is using thirst and starvation as a tool of war against people in Pakistan. That is now normalized because what Israel has done. Which I said at the beginning of the conflict, I said Israel must be defeated because what they're doing is they're scaling back the Geneva Conventions. Humanity has been violent, always been violent, but we strove to improve and learn lessons and decrease the violence of warfare. And the ruling class in the West have completely threw all rules off the table. They are fully embracing terrorism where any act is legitimate, where there's nothing that's too barbaric if it means taking out the enemies of the state. I'm not going to play the video because we're short on time, but you guys know they've been taking doctors after completely destroying the medical infrastructure in Gaza, which they have accomplished. The same way they destroyed the universities. But that's why anyone who said when Israel just had the right to defend themselves, like Bernie says, anyone who's saying that this is a war like everyone in the media does, they are genocide apologists. They have completely wiped out universities, hospitals, and they took the lead doctors in all these hospitals, and they are torturing them to death. They found signs of torture, the use of burns, genital torture, all this disgusting stuff that you do against these people. Zionists are the modern day Nazis. They learned from the Nazis, and they're trying to improve their torture tactics. And they have been in complete rebellion against international law. And this is why, even though I strongly advocate for the one-state solution, anyone who's a part of IDF, which many of them are because they had to sign up for the military, they're not innocent. They should be tried by military tribunals. They should be forced to go to court over their war crimes before they ever settle in Palestine again. Palestinians shouldn't be forced to live with these monsters. Because this is a settler. This is someone they will call innocent. And by the way, the IDF have been coordinating with these terrorist settlers. This is a sack of flour that they are destroying as they're engaging in a massive famine. There's already reports of many people dying of starvation because Israel hasn't allowed any aid to go in 3 weeks. And this is something that Donald Trump is enabling. Miriam Addison paid Donald Trump hundreds of millions of dollars to starve the Palestinian people. So it's not only an Israeli policy. You have these militarized settlers that's throwing flour, stopping aid trucks and preventing them from going in. We covered this before. They are protected by the IDF. This is sponsored by the IDF. This is supported by Israel. So when you guys say there's an innocent Israeli settler, what are you talking about? This is what they're doing. The polls show they support Israel using starvation as a tool of war. They had a riot in order to protect the right for Israelis to engage in mass rape of Palestinians. And it's been confirmed, and this is another report, that you have divisions in the IDF that engage in competitions to see who can kill the most civilians. They have competitions to see who can snipe the most children. So you have settlers that throwing flour away, engaging in starvation, use starvation as a tool of war. And then you have entire military units that they play games out of how many civilians they can kill. But we're expected to just welcome these people back home once they come back from serving the IDF. People wonder why people have a hatred for Gal Gadot and why Hollywood is filled. Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman, she served in the IDF during the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 2006. So if you're part of the IDF, you should go on trial for war crimes. And we are seeing this happen in the global population, the backlash against the genocidal Israelis. I'm going to introduce our guests soon. We have amazing guests. We have a great journalist from China, Jingjing. I will introduce you here very soon. Just give me a thumbs up when you're ready. I'm going to finish the presentation real quick. I'm going to bring my guest in. And what the corporate media did tell you, I'm going to just quickly wrap this up. I'll bring my guest in. You had Hamas that offered to have a 5-year truce, a 5-year ceasefire in exchange for all the hostages. I thought it was about freeing the hostages. Israel declined it once again. And if you watch Western media, you would never know but that Hamas has offered this to Israel multiple times for all the people who say it's about hostages. And then Israel will drop bombs, and then they will murder their own hostages with the bombs. And then they will blame Hamas for it. Then, as we see with settlers blocking flour and blocking aid, you will have Israeli hostages come back a little thin because there's not food in Gaza. Then they will blame Hamas for starving the hostages when there's no food. Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, was found he hasn't ate for 3 days. He was in his body when he died was in starvation mode. The leaders of Hamas is not eating. Then they wonder why Israeli hostages are coming back thinner. Oh, man, I'm gonna cover this more detail later because I want to get my guests in here. Man, 45 minutes went by fast. Very therapeutic when I'm alone, able to rant for a while. I'm gonna cover this more in detail. I may do a hotspot video on this. I'm gonna cut this segment short, but Biden have officially admitted that he hasn't done you had people in the Israeli government like Michael Herzog. I'm gonna read this quote. God did the state of Israel a favor that Biden was the president during this period. We fought in Gaza for over a year, and the administration never came to us and said, ceasefire now. It never did, and that's not to be taken for granted. So remember when AOC said that Joe Biden was fighting for a ceasefire? That's why AOC 2028 and all her future endeavors should be dead on arrival. That was one of the most malicious, barbaric, pro-genocide lies ever told in politics. That everyone who supported Biden repeated. And people are so tired of AOC, and I ended with this, that they have Ilhan Omar, of all people, who is not a saint herself. Even she is taking shots at AOC now. I never thought I would see this. Ilhan Omar is tired of AOC shit. She said, we all knew they weren't working tirelessly for a ceasefire. It was all a lie. Who do you guys think she's calling now when she says that? That's a direct call out to AOC with this lie. And this is why the Democratic Party is beyond the pale. Like, this is unacceptable that anyone would ever support a racist genocidal party like this.
She is working tirelessly to secure a ceasefire in Gaza and bringing hostages home.
Look at that little fucking smirk that she does. That's AOC knowing that she's telling you a blatant lie in order to serve genocide. So who do you think Ilhan Omar is referencing when she says that people saying they're working for a ceasefire, working tirelessly for a ceasefire? That's a direct dig by Ilhan on AOC. Isn't that interesting? But anyway, let's bring on our guest. We have amazing international journalists. We had her on RBN a few times. You guys know I've been very interested and very obsessed with talking to many different voices in China. And Li Jingjing has an amazing YouTube channel. She does great interviews. I saw you traveled as well. I think you went to Malaysia, do a lot of traveling, blogging as well. I appreciate your work because as an American, you're one of the sources I use to learn more about China. So thank you for joining us on RBN, Li Jingjing.
Thank you for having me. You were using my content as a resource. Thank you. Thank you for the support. Love coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have you here. We also have my brother James. You guys saw the tweet that he had when he was James does such great work on foreign policy, rebuking the propaganda about North Korea. You had a great interview with Julia, and I know you wanted to join us, so it's always great to have you, James. Anytime you want to join, thank you for joining us as well, brother.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks. Nice to finally meet you, Miss Lee.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah. Once again, we have I follow Danny. We had Counterpoint China on. We have the brothers at Beat Media. I love those guys. They are in China, and that's where I get my perspective from because I still want to travel to China one day. I'm very impressed with what they have done, and I'm unapologetic about it. People, America has propagandized us into refusing to humanize what the state consider our enemies. They will look at you praising China, they think you're weird, but what they did, uplifting so many people out of poverty, the building the infrastructure, and becoming a superpower without ever dropping a bomb. It's incredible, and that's why I always want to learn more about it. And I've been worried about China, to be honest, because the Trump and the neocon right strategy to combat China is to pull the rug and destroy the economic system because they're afraid of the rise of China. I want to get your perspective on this. We can start with this, and James, you can feel free. I know you probably have some questions that you want to ask as well, and you can get to it as well. But to start off, I want to ask how is China dealing with the tariffs because I just want to get your opinion on it. I was pretty nervous at first because this seemed like this is a panic strategy by the West to try to take out China to prevent the rise of the new Chinese century. Very cowardly move. If you can't win, you're gonna flip the table. That's what Trump and MAGA did. But feel free to share your perspective. Thank you for joining us once again, Lee.
Okay. We are doing really good here. We are fine. If you ask any Chinese person in China, no Chinese is worrying about this. So the confidence you feel from the Chinese people will amaze you. And I can answer how the government is prepared. As soon as Trump announced this tariff increase, this tariff war, this government immediately released a series of policies like or retaliate with the same tariff and prepare and have a political meeting and calling all those business people, what are we going to do? And you know, that shows how prepared the government is. They have been waiting for this moment for a really long time. So and and also many of the policies not after Trump announced the tariff war. For example, boosting domestic consumptions, boosting the other international markets. That policy started a long time ago, since like last year, 2 years ago, and BRI, like the countries and the other international market, that started like decades ago. So I mean, everything has been planned for long term to prepare for the worst case scenario. So when the U.S. president announced this new tariff war, we're like, okay, fine, finally, like you brought it on. Like we prepared this for a long time, especially during his first term, he already started a trade war. I think during the last time, his trade war did cause some influence to the domestic market. But second time, like you are so unpredictable. We're very well prepared. So I think for the government is very well prepared with a series of policies to boost domestic consumptions, to drive all those companies in China to, you know, like maybe change your market to other countries. And we have so many Chinese media have done a lot of interviews to all those companies who does foreign trade. Those companies in southern China basically produce everyday products for like U.S. consumers. And all of those owners, so like, well, yeah, this may cause some short-term damage, but you know, we are not worried at all. If U.S. consumers are not buying it, we will sell them to other consumers. Those consumers, I mean, because the U.S. doesn't represent the whole world. We have almost 200 countries, and especially there's global South countries who many of them, over 120 or 30, I forgot the exact number, countries have joined the Belt and Road Initiative. And we have so many international mechanism for such as BRICS, regional programs to enhance regional stability, to enhance regional trade. So I think people, like even companies, are not worried. And then if you ask any Chinese people, if anybody has learned the history of China, you know, bullying, threatening does not work on Chinese people. If you talk nicely, friendly, sure, we probably will negotiate. But if you threat, Chinese people never surrender, does not take any bully, and does not take that tone. Especially considering a lot of people are talking about the 100 years of humiliation. We have the foreign occupation, foreign invasions for such a long time. We've been through wars. We have 8 forces. 8 forces means the invaders, soldiers from 8 countries invaded here. I mean, we have seen this for a really long time. And after the People's Republic of China was founded, our Chairman Mao, have announced at the Tiananmen saying, since today, October the 1st, 1949, when PRC was founded, all the Chinese people no longer need to kneel down to anybody. We stand up, finally. So that's the attitude of the whole nation. I'm sorry, there's some noises outside. It's very early morning here in Beijing, so there's some noises. If you heard that, like, ignore that. So that is the spirit of Chinese people. And if we have this foreign invaders or forces or bullies threatening us, that will only unite the whole nation to fight back, and we can take any consequences. And that's basically the attitude. I just draw a general picture of the whole nation.
Yeah, that was a fantastic breakdown, and we already seen Trump blink. We already see the MAGA fold, and most importantly, we already seen Trump's numbers decrease massively. And it's wild to see, and we know that the United States presidents don't really change foreign policy, but it's wild to see that Trump is about to tank the United States standing on the world stage worse than Biden at this point, because I'm seeing things I never thought I was going to see. Like I saw China meeting with South Korea and Japan. I saw Ursula von der Leyen, the Nazi Barbie herself. Even she was like, man, I think the EU, we need to start trading more with China. And this is why I dislike the EU, because what have China ever done to the EU other than sell you goods? Like, I believe China has been too good to the EU, considering how much the EU been complicit with the United States' aggressive actions toward China. So EU is now waking up and realizing that, hey man, I think it's not a good idea to fall off the cliff, fall in the United States, and try and to decouple from China, because EU directly said, like, the idea that we're going to decouple from China is absurd. We're not going to do it. Emmanuel Macron also said that we need to start following the United States position regarding China. That's coming from Emmanuel Macron, the globalist himself. So, and James, I'll pass it to you here soon, but I want to ask you one other question regarding these moves that China are making in Southeast Asia. I read about Japan, South Korea, and China meeting as well. You had discussions with EU and China where they say they're going to drop sanctions from each other as well. So can you share more about that, like the moves that China is making and the ways that it has protected itself from Trump's tariff policy?
Sorry, like the question is more about how the Asian countries are reacting to this?
Yeah, and for example, I saw China working with Japan and South Korea. So I want you to, is there any more you can share with us regarding the moves that China has made to kind of diversify itself and made itself more independent in the West?
So there's something, I think it's very interesting to how this whole tariff war that the US president launched plays out, because you know, like I've been to Malaysia, you mentioned in the beginning, and our president actually took a tour to Vietnam, Malaysia, Cambodia just earlier this month. And if you talk to people in those countries, politicians in those countries, you realize, okay, so, you know, like Malaysia, Cambodia, Vietnam are longtime friends of China. Like we are close neighbors. And I went to Malaysia, like China and Malaysia started communication and trading. We can trace back to thousands of years ago, back to Han Dynasty. That's a long history. So like the relationship between China and Malaysia started at least 1,000 years ago. And 23% of the population in Malaysia is Chinese Malaysian. So there's a close relation. It didn't just start today. It didn't just start because of the US started a war. So we have been friends for a long time. And you know what? So I saw, when I go on Twitter, I see some dumb comments from some people saying, you know, like US market is so big, so important. If we just cut US market, that will suffocate China. But US market is not that important. It is a big market. We do sell a lot to the US, but the number one trading partner to China is ASEAN countries. ASEAN countries. What's ASEAN? ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, meaning our number one trading partners, our neighbors in Southeast Asia. And China is number one trading partner for many of these Southeast Asian countries too. For example, to Malaysia, China is number one trading partner for 16 consecutive years. So, I mean, that's the majority of trade. And EU is the second largest trading partner of China. US is the third. US market used to be the number one several years ago. But like as I said, China has prepared with a trade war. You know what the US gonna do. So in the past few years, China reduced the reliance on the US market. So no, it's not much a big deal. And also it's interesting to see what do we buy from each other. I mean, China and the US market. China buys soybeans, a lot of agricultural stuff from the US market. The US market buy batteries, rare earth, machineries, a lot of this cell phones, this high-tech stuff. So I see on social networks, a lot of people are like, wait, what? China, you are buying agricultural products, you are buying cell phones, batteries, who is developing country? Some people are confused. So, I mean, but like for products like soybeans or like agricultural stuff, a lot of other countries have that. Brazil has beef, has soybeans, and has a good relationship with China. It's a member of BRICS. So if you want to stop selling that to China, well, we'll just buy that from other markets. But how do you feel when you don't have coffee machines, batteries for your EV cars or cell phones or like everything? And then like what I think I'm not sure how many people realize how many things are produced in China. Say
Trump
coffee
had to bail
machines.
out farmers. Yeah, Trump
Yeah,
had to bail out farmers during the first trade war, and it's going to be way worse this time. The first trade
yeah.
war, first term. Many people don't talk about this, but Donald Trump had to pay a subsidy and bail out farmers who was bankrupt after China reinvested into Brazil soybeans, and that was in the first term, which was way milder, which is happening now. But please continue your thought. But people don't realize how devastating this is.
No, the thing is like washing machines, coffee machines, all these things. Yes, t-shirts, socks, probably made in China, but also say I went to some factories in southern China. For example, this porcelain factory, they make all China's porcelains, and it ranges from your mugs, say the mugs you buy from Universal Studio, Disney, and they make all the ornaments in your yard, in your garden. They make the sculptures in your churches. So basically, the entire factory, I cannot buy from the factory because all their products are for foreign trade. They sell that to other markets. And when I see their factory, I realize, oh my God, how much daily products in the US market is actually produced by this one factory? And also a lot of factories say, though, I think a lot of people already discussing the rare earth. China basically controls the 90% of the world's rare earth. Rare earth is crucial material to make chips, to make weapons, even to make a lot of high-tech stuff. So this tariff war launched by the US politicians is really just punishing American people. Like, it doesn't affect us. We have the actual products. If you don't buy, there are always other consumers. But you're asking the US consumers to pay like 200% more for their daily products. So like it only hurts people in the US. So sometimes I really don't understand what the logic of the tariff war. Oh, sorry, I just also need to mention, I just mentioned Southeast Asia, but an interesting thing is Japan and South Korea are friends, allies of the US. But China is also #1 trading partner to them. For many things, for politics, Japan and South Korea has always been on the US side. But this time, interesting thing is you see the China, Japan, South Korea is uniting together. So because you cannot just lose a #1 trading partner. The US is asking Japan and South Korea, their allies, to commit suicide, economic suicide, for the sake of life. You need to be on my side. This is not fair. So this is just, I think, a positive outcome of this is it does ruin the reputation of the US, even ruin the reputation among their allies and friends. A lot of people are realizing, well, seems like China is a reasonable and stable trading partner. And for business people, whether they like the China or not, or whether they like the politics or not, they want a stable trading partner that commit to what they agreed on. So I think it's one result is like people seeing who China and US, who is the reasonable one. Maybe I just want to do business with China. This is what I think.
Yeah, I want to share this because this is what I mentioned earlier. I covered this a while ago, but this is Emmanuel Macron saying Europe must resist pressure to become America's followers. And that coming from Emmanuel Macron of all people. Europe must reduce its dependency on the United States and avoid getting dragged into a confrontation between China and the United States over Taiwan. And this is before Trump's tariffs, guys. So that you guys can see how just incompetent, deranged, and what I would call delusional foreign policy has led the United States in a position to only increase the power of China. But James, I'm glad he was able to join us tonight. I want to pass it to you. Do you have any questions for Lee? Anything else you want to bring up to her?
Yeah, I just was thinking about your statement that China was really counting on the U.S. to do what it did as far as the trade war. And it's kind of like China was like, okay, so the United States is going to do a tariff war in 5, 4, 3, 2. And it just goes to show where does China really just see America as this predictable entity? Like the phrase is, I trust a snake to be a snake. Is that how China views the United States, as just this predictable force that they already have contingencies in place just in case, and they're counting on it? Because it feels like China's playing 4D chess, and the United States doesn't even have checkers on the board. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I see what you mean. But I think this is not counting on the US. But I think that's a mentality of Chinese people. We always prepare for the worst case scenario. And like politically and economically. For example, Chinese people like to save up money in their bank. They don't spend too much. Like I need always to have some savings in my bank for the worst case scenario. Where something happens, I have like this bank of money. I think this mentality comes from our history, like because we've been through the worst, like say famines and natural disasters. All this, like the U.S. actually sanctioned China multiple times in the history. So China, a lot of people saying, have brought this point. China has a 5,000 years history, and why we keep bringing this the long history of China? Because many of the things happen nowadays already happened in our history. So, like we learn from history. Look, the 5,000 years history, every dynasty, all the history is written down in our textbooks. We learned that from elementary school, middle school, high school. So I think now what's happening, nothing is really new. You can always find this incident that caused the collapse of a certain dynasty, a certain kingdom in the history, or an enemy did this tactic and how they win that war in that tactic. So this is what the 5,000 year history taught us. So that's why the Chinese people nowadays still, we save up. We save up money and food. We always want to make friends with the U.S. people, but U.S. politicians flip-flop all the time. Today it's Trump flip-flopping, but if next time it's another president from another party, they will also flip-flop. They keep changing. They lack consistency in their policies. What it is consistent among the U.S. politicians is they see China as a rival, as an enemy.
Yeah.
So this is certain. So I think since you are so unpredictable, you're flip-flopping all the time, the only thing we can do is just develop ourselves, make sure we can deal with the worst case scenario. So this is not a reaction to the US politicians. This is more like we only focus on what we should do, what we need to do. So no matter how crazy other governments, other people are like, well, we're fine. So I think this is reality. But US politicians is, yes, of course, unpredictable. And a lot of Chinese people do see the US politicians very toxic. You cannot trust. But they are very friendly to US people. If you see the, like in the, especially since the visa exemption policies in the past 1 or 2 years, many people from around the world, especially from Western countries, are coming to China to travel, to explore, to make friends. As we speak, there are still thousands of US students, high school students, university students are traveling to China in different cities to have this people-to-people exchanges. This is what we hope. Like, of course, a lot of the US people, maybe many of them have this hostility towards Chinese people, but I think I can understand because that's what media has been telling you. That's what your politicians have been telling you. That's China is taking your jobs. China is like ripping you off. You've been hearing this. But look at what the mega influencer iShowSpeed did when he was live streaming in China. That's fantastic, right? That's fantastic. Like even he like shocked. Wow, this is Shanghai. Wow, this is Chongqing. And you see how welcomed he is by the Chinese people in every city. People are giving him free stuff, free food. Like it's such a. I think that's a perfect example of the friendly people to people exchanges. And I believe if more people from the U.S. can come to China, like iShowSpeed or like other vloggers or like all those U.S. students, just come to see for yourself and talk to Chinese people. You realize, oh, weird. Like Chinese people are just people too. we smile too. So like I think that's enhanced the connections between us, and then the U.S. politicians' lies will just collapse.
Yeah. So James, when we going to China? We got to make it happen.
Yes,
that's gonna happen one day. Because I found it interesting because I'm a big enthusiast of Zhangzhou Shu, HSS, or Red Note. And it was interesting because once that happened, there was so much great exchanges I had with many of my Chinese brothers and sisters. I covered it a lot on our channel, the amazing threads that and lines of communication we had. And then the Chinese government immediately moved to make their apps more accessible to Americans. But the response of people like Senator Josh Hawley, my senator in Missouri, and Senator Tom Cotton, one of the most extreme anti-China fascists you can possibly find, he immediately moved to try to ban it. So what does it say about the West that they want less communication between the American people and the Chinese, while the Chinese people, they love the opportunity. They begging people to come over, while the United States want to shut its borders and they want American people to be afraid of everyone. They want, and that's why it's surprising because Americans will see what happened in China and they can't believe it because our government has convinced us that every other country that is not the United States is a shithole, that is not worth visiting. And what do you guys think that serve? That serve imperialism, that serve their goal to antagonize. So if you think China is an authoritarian, oppressive state, you'd be more likely to support sanctions and trade wars and potential bombings. That's why they convince you that Russia's their enemy, why North Korea is their enemy, which is why we must decolonize our mind, talk to our people, and humanize the people. I'm not saying you have to be enthusiastic as I am. I understand that I am particularly enthusiastic, but at least humanize the enemies of the United States. But James, any last word you want to bring up? I want to ask Lee about Taiwan here soon. We're not going to stay too much longer, but anything else you want to add, James, before? I want to give you a last chance before we go on to Taiwan.
Yeah, just it's more like a statement, but I find it funny how the United States thinks they're so important as to say, well, China needs us. I want to look at the politicians in the United States and go, bro, you're only 5% of the world's population. What makes you think you got that much juice? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And between China and India, it's well over like what, 35, 40% of the population, world population, just among them, right? So you literally have about 3 billion people between those countries, and the world is what, around 8 billion people. So why are we making ourselves to seem more important? Because we're only 5%. It doesn't make any sense. So to be honest with you, we really don't have that much pull. It's like it's like somebody who's it's like a chihuahua trying to dictate to a bull mastiff of where to go, what to do, and how it should be done. And the bull mastiff just looks at him like, you're a pipsqueak. What do I have to do with you? You know, that's the way it feels.
Yeah. One thing I find interesting, because they always they will critique China for having they say Xi Jinping has been a leader for a long time. They don't have term limits. Big shout out to Louise. I appreciate the super chat. Meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi just floated the idea that she's going to run again. Dianne Feinstein wasn't replaced as senator until she fucking died. Like, Mitch McConnell, his brain is leaking. These are the people who have power in the United States. The Zionist lobby controls who will stay in Washington. Mitch McConnell has been a cog in our machine forever because he serves the Zionist agenda. The same with Dianne Feinstein. The difference between the United States and China is that we're stuck with our oligarchs with no actual coherent central planning. China is a country with a large support for the population, and they have a government that have long-term plans, which is why they have high-speed rail, despite the fact that Trump in Texas, they killed high-speed rail. But anyway, let me ask you the last question here, Lead, I have, because I saw this earlier, and I've been very interested in Taiwan politics, especially since their last election, because I covered it on this show that the majority of the Taiwanese people support the current status quo with China, and there are a lot of discontent between the Taiwanese people and their government. But if you was to watch Western media, if you was to watch Fox News, Gordon Chang, and all these people, they will have you believe that Taiwan is this completely unified country that is just starving to break away from China. But so I want to ask you, since you've been covering this story, and I saw you tweet this out, and I found it interesting how in Taiwan right now there are giant protests. So I want to ask you to explain what's going on here, any additional information you have. And what is the current state between China and Taiwan relations?
So I posted this. You see, there's a lot of people on the street in Taipei. I think from some source, it said about 200,000 people took to the streets to protest, and they want the current leader of Taiwan Island, Lai Ching-te, to step down. Why I posted this, what's interesting to me is such a large-scale protest in Taiwan. No mainstream Western media did any report on that. And Western mainstream media always care about everything about Taiwan Island. But such a massive protest, you cannot find that on Reuters or CNN or BBC. So it's a little bit interesting. So I posted. Yes, so as you see, this South China Morning Post recent news coverage. So people took to the street, rally, want the current leader, Lai Ching-te, basically is a puppet of the U.S. imperialists, placed by the rule of the U.S. politician instructions. And also, he's the person, the William Lai Ching-te is person want to separate Taiwan, want to make Taiwan Island independent, which is very, it's, okay, let's go through one by one. So I'm not sure whether our audiences understand the history between Chinese mainland and Taiwan Island. So first, let me start complaining about how media is using the phrase, it's not China versus Taiwan, it's Chinese mainland versus Taiwan Island. Because even the U.S. politician has been supporting Taiwan for such a long time. U.S. never admit Taiwan is an independent country. You can go to the White House, you can go to the Congress, all the government pages, you cannot find a document that says Taiwan is an independent country. And they support Taiwan is a part of China. And that was announced by former U.S. President Jimmy Carter. And all the country basically has a diplomatic relations with China admit the same. They don't support Taiwan independence, and they believe Taiwan is part of China. All the countries that have diplomatic relations with China, and including the UN. If you don't believe me, go do your research, go to the UK government, go to the US government, go to Australian government. They all say the same. And you cannot find a single embassy, you cannot find a US embassy in Taiwan, because they do not recognize this country. But all the US media, even the government says that, but all the media play the word game, trying to phrase like China and Taiwan, make it sound like two different countries, but it is not. So it's Chinese mainland versus Taiwan Island. But what caused the situation nowadays is the result of civil war between CPC, the Communist Party of China, and the KMT, Kuomintang. So before China was founded, there's a civil war between CPC and the KMT. They fought, but the KMT lost the war. So KMT leader Chiang Kai-shek fled to the Taiwan Island. Chairman Mao the leader of CPC, won the war, and they founded the People's Republic of China. So that is a result of the civil war. The KMT fled to Taiwan. But after they fled to Taiwan, they never want to like create a new country. This like the KMT in Taiwan say, we are the legitimate China. You are not. And CPC is like, we are the legitimate government of China. We are recognized by the world and by the UN. So they are fighting who is the legitimate leader of China. They never want to be like create a different country. So until like in recent years, after decades of brainwashing, detached from the mainland, a lot of young people have no education about the Chinese history. Even they speak the Chinese language, even they are the Han Chinese people, like the same ethnicity like mine, like, and they just they celebrate all the Chinese traditions. They say, oh, we're not Chinese people. Why? If you're not Chinese people, why are you calling your language Chinese? Where are your ancestors from, like Shandong province? Where are your ancestors, grandparents are from, like Fujian province, Guangdong province? And so, and I interviewed one of my friends from Taiwan, Zhong Xiangyu, and he said, you know what? When he was in school, I think around 2000, he realized there's a change in curriculum. Suddenly, they no longer taught Chinese history. Since starting from 2000, they don't teach Chinese history. They're trying to teach students you are different. You're different from China, and he also said basically all the media in Taiwan is like the Chinese translation of Western mainstream media. So this is the result. That's why I think one of the reasons the current young generation.
What do you because I wonder this as well. Is that because a lot of the CIA and Western propaganda that they publish?
That's one reason. That's one reason. There is indeed like a CIA influence meddling, but also CIA, the US saw the opportunity, saw there are some people with a separatist spirit, like they cooperate with separatists in Taiwan. Yes, exactly. The same strategy they did in every other country. There are people in Taiwan have the idea like, how about we just create a different country, we're separate from China. And so they got a lot of support from the US and foreign influences. And then they changed the textbook, changed education. They use media to pollute the environment. So that's why the current young generations in Taiwan don't feel connected with Chinese mainland. And many of them don't travel to the mainland. Those who do travel to mainland, they see that how advanced Chinese mainland is and how developed it is. It's not as scary as the media has been telling them. But a lot of people just like, why would I go to Chinese mainland? Because the media has been telling. I think the same like many American people, because they created this very scary, dark image. So they are afraid of going there. There's no communication. That's even create more divisions. And I remember I talked to a lot of young people from Hong Kong several years ago. They did the same to people in Hong Kong. I met several young Hong Kong university students who moved to mainland to work. And they said that when the first time we came to mainland, we were so scared because we were taught once we cross the port, like from Hong Kong to Shenzhen, just neighboring city, like just 30 minutes, you can just cross the border, go to the mainland. And we were told once we cross the border, we will be kidnapped and got our kidneys stolen. What? And people will sell our kidneys to buy iPhones. So like, so that and they, well, the first time they came here, they brought everything from their family, like just all the little things they thought that mainland don't have, that, like daily products. So like you can buy that everywhere and it's so much cheaper, but they believe the Chinese mainland don't have this. So but after living in the mainland for several years, they're like, oh, okay, so it's not like that at all. So they don't have this scare, they don't have the fear, and they are the communicators between Hong Kong and the mainland So there are much more communications between mainland and Hong Kong, but we need more of that between Chinese mainland and Taiwan. So I think that's called that. And the rally you saw, I think a lot of them are the KMT members, like the video that you just showed, the speaker demanding Lai Ching-te to step down. He is one of the members of the KMT. Of course, there are opposition parties, but KMT, again, they don't want to separate Taiwan from China. He demanded Lai Ching-te to step down because you are just selling Taiwan's interest to the U.S. For example, the chip making factory, the world leading chip making factory in Taiwan, just donated $100 billion to the U.S. and will move their factories to the U.S. And that will only encourage more people, more talents to leave Taiwan and move to the U.S. And the only most cutting edge technology, and it's the TSMC, the chip making factory in Taiwan, is why the U.S. is one of the reasons why U.S. is so concerned about Taiwan, because they're making chips. They are the world #1 chip makers. If you are selling this your only advantage to the U.S., then you are nothing more. You're just you will be brain drained first, because all your talents will leave the Taiwan. You will be brain drained, and then after you're being brain drained, you're nothing more than just a aircraft carrier, unsinkable aircraft carrier to the U.S. So like a lot of people are very unhappy with what it is doing now. You're selling the interests of Taiwan. Also, you're just making people in Taiwan's life miserable. So the KMT are standing up to like, no, we want you to step down. You do not sell Taiwan, and we don't want to separate Taiwan from China. And interesting, like I mentioned, the CPC KMT had fought the civil war. That's why they fled to Taiwan, and they were fighting for who is the legitimate government. But interesting turn of events is in the past 2 years, we saw a lot of KMT delegations being the friendly messenger to visit Chinese mainland. You know what? We want friendly exchanges. Let's be friends. Let bygones be bygones. We don't want to separate Taiwan. We want to make friends. So now KMT is the friends who want to be the communicators between Taiwan and the Chinese mainland. So that's the current situation.
I'm glad to see that protest, because the Taiwanese people, they make me nervous, man. I'm not gonna lie, because I really hope the people of Taiwan learn from what the United States have done to Ukraine. Like, do you guys see Ukraine right now? You guys see what the United States have done to the Middle East? When I see the young Taiwanese people trust the United States, I'm like, man, it's a tragedy. The United States policy, and I discussed this on my show before. Let me pull up this receipt. It's always been, and they openly admit this, strategic ambiguity. What does that mean? I still remember back, especially in my young tanky days, where I would say that Taiwan is not a country, it's a province of China. And the American hatred, I mean, even from the left, like just even a few years ago, they're like, how dare you say Taiwan is not a country? There are many Americans who legitimately believe that Taiwan is a completely separate ass country from China instead of a province. Why is that? Because the West have engaged in strategic ambiguity, where their official policy, as you laid out, Lee, is that they acknowledge that Taiwan is part of China, but we don't behave like it. Mm-hmm. NATO, do you guys know that NATO as an organization acknowledges that Taiwan is not part of China? Its state policy, which was central in normalizing relations between the United States and China. And you guys know I have been almost too obsessed with watching corporate propaganda, and I have seen countless segments about Taiwan and China and how there's going to be a war over Taiwan. And 99%, and I'm being actually pretty charitable here, 99% of them never mention the fact that we have a one China policy. 99% of them present the story as if Taiwan is a separate country that China is aggrieving. Now, let me outline how ridiculous this is, and I'll give you your last thoughts after this. There is a very legitimate Hawaiian separatist movement, because Hawaii is was an indigenous society that was conquered by the settler colonialists who lived in the United States, who believe in manifest destiny. And there's great activists like Hawani K. Trask. As late as the 90s and 2000s, people to this day that still advocate for separatism and Hawaiian independence, something that the United States refused to acknowledge, even though there is no historical ties between Hawaii and the United States. In fact, do you guys know that Taiwan is 3 times closer to the mainland of China than Hawaii is to the mainland of the United States? 3 times. Go book a plane ticket and fly to Hawaii and look how long it takes you to get there. It's not even close to the United States. There is no legitimate claim other than might makes right for the United States owned Hawaii. Any Hawaiian activists who advocate for independence is treated as an extremist and retaliated against. So Wally K. Trask, I recommend you guys listen to her lectures. So can you guys imagine, with that said, the reaction of the West, of the United States, if China and Russia paid and propped up Hawaiian separatists? In fact, imagine if they had the Chinese equivalent of a Nancy Pelosi who flies to Hawaii and legitimizes the Hawaiian separatist movement. Can you imagine the reaction of the United States and the West? So people think it's actually, that's why I think it's hilarious when people think China is being stingy on this. I think they've been very lenient, actually, considering the transgressions. But Lee, I appreciate you for joining. Any last thoughts you have on Taiwan? Any thoughts, because the Trump administration have been pushing hard, and they've been estimating that they're going to go to war for Taiwan by 2027. That was the Navy prediction. So, any thoughts about that? Any final thoughts that you have on Taiwan and the pressure the West have to separate Taiwan and China? Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Me?
Yeah. I was asking for any
I thought you were asking James. Yeah.
No worries. James, do you have any final thoughts? Could we about wrap up? Any final thoughts you have, James? Lee?
Well, I think I'm not worried about that. China is very patient with the reunification. But if the separated forces, the US pressuring, it only will accelerate the speed of reunification. And as I mentioned earlier in the stream, that we have hundreds of humiliation. We've been through multiple wars, invasions. We had different countries colonize us. So the Taiwan Island is the last piece that represents the colonial past that we have been through. Because it first being colonized by Japan, colonized by Netherlands, colonized by Japan, and then the US supported. So Taiwan is the last piece of the last colony. So I can assure you, the 1.4 billion people in Chinese mainland all want the same reunification. No one in China want to lose all this part. And it's funny, the US media will say, China's government is threatening, they want to reunify Taiwan, but it's so fast. Actually, the government is very patient. If you ask any Chinese people, they were like, let's take that back tomorrow. Every Chinese people on the street, you ask them, Taiwan, let's take that back tomorrow. They don't want to wait for 1 more minute. But the government is wait. So we have all the time in the world. How about we just start to build more connections? We repair the past. We make up the past. We catch up with each other. And so that's just the thing. I'm not worried about this at all. I'm sure that's the goal we are destined to realize, and we will realize the reunification. And Trump, I think he has more things to worry about. The U.S. politicians, I would really want to ask you two the question. It's how are people in the U.S. are reacting to the tariff war? Has that caused any problem for your lives now? And I know, you also mentioned Xiaohongshu. I also want to add that because, the exchanges between Chinese people and American people on Xiaohongshu. They found how friendly they are. The one thing that shocked American people the most is Chinese people can't afford groceries. I was like, that isn't that normal? That's the thing that shocked you the most. Afford the groceries, we eat fresh fruits and vegetables. So how that are things that the simpler thing in our lives can shock people in the US. So I was just wondering, what's your answer? What's the situation in the US now?
Yeah, that's a great question to wrap it up on, to highlight how horrific it is in the United States. There are polls that show that the majority of American people, they have a very doomeristic view of the future. That's why there's always these like apocalyptic cults and like theories always pop up. Remember, like 2012, there was the 2000 Y2J conspiracy. Like Americans have this natural doomeristic idea, and that's the failure of the government. Meanwhile, I saw polls in China where it showed the majority of the Chinese people are very enthusiastic about the future. They're excited about the programs that their government is carrying out. And that's the difference between enthusiasm. These are things and metrics that the ruling class in the United States, they never mention. They'll bring up GDP, they'll bring up how much the rich and the wealthy have made, but the average person in the United States have been checked out, which is a damning state of United States politics, where most people don't vote. They don't bother to vote because they know nothing is going to really change for them. And James, I know you probably want to answer the question too, so I ended with this. When you look at the Congress in the United States, they only have a 13% approval rating. It's funny. Like we can talk about Trump and his numbers because of tariffs. The tariffs actually hurt him, to answer your question directly. Like for the first time, Trump is like underwater with the economy. Most Americans don't like him. He's historically unpopular, one of the most unpopular presidents of all time. But despite that, Congress is doing much worse. The media is even less popular than Congress because they hear that the lies that the media tell by Taiwan, for example. I told you guys, they would never tell you the truth. So the American people distrust in their institutions is representative of how awful things have been in terms of the United States central planning. Hopefully that answers your question, because even without feeling the tariffs, the people that they refuse to talk to, they will never get that message on. You will have like a Wall Street banker who will talk about how great the economy is. On CNN, they'll have nothing but millionaires. And that's why I think a lot of people in China don't really understand how bad things was in America, because they kind of fell for American propaganda as well. When I went on HS, Zhangzhou Shu, many of them I saw a thread where one of the people thought Americans was lying about how bad things was, because they assumed that Americans were living better than it actually was. And that's because the United States have a very sophisticated propaganda sphere, which was funded by USAID and many others, to trick people into thinking that. But James, I'll let you answer the question, and we can wrap up, Lee. I appreciate your time. It was very informative. But Lee, James, do you want to answer the question before we wrap up? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, sure. As far as the reaction of people and what's going on in China, it's really a shock, because we have been used to seeing China as this poor nation where the workers are, they have to sleep at the job, and then there's nets around the building so that if in case they want to self-harm and jump out the window, then they'll get caught instead of expiring. And so there's this narrative that's been said that China is nowhere near with the United States. But then it's like when we see Xiaohongshu, when we see Shanghai, when we see Beijing, when we see the subway system, when we see the train system, all these things that have big, beautiful infrastructure, a lot of us are taken aback and going, wait a minute, if the United States has been lying to us about China, what other country have they been lying to us about?
Yeah.
And so it gets to a point where it's not just the food that we are upset about. It's the housing that we're upset about.
Mm-hmm.
Because many of us, our homeless rates are skyrocketing. We are getting to the point where Their homeless rates kind of went up 12% in a year, then 15% in a year, and it's completely unsustainable. And meanwhile, you're looking at China, and you don't see a homeless person on the street. And so now we're seeing this, and then how friendly people are from China on Xiaohongshu, and how welcoming they are. And it flipped the script. And now the truth is revealed. And so now we're seeing that. And so a lot of people, particularly millennials like myself, Gen Z, they are a lot more sympathetic to the People's Republic of China than our older cohorts like the Gen X and the Boomers.
Yeah, look
But
at this.
Them, the Gen X and the Boomers, they're starting to see it now too. And so they're like, we've been lied to. And you get angry at your government when you find out you've been lied to. So
yeah, look at this. I feel like I was very happy when I saw this, because I feel like this is me doing my part. This is me doing my part. I share so many polls, and I don't want to paint too rosy a picture, because there's still a lot of ridiculous anti-China views, but the tide has shifted the way we haven't seen before. I read the headline and leave. We can get out here. Negative views of China have softened slightly among Americans. And this is exactly why media rated RBN as the most extreme far-left media institution in America. Because I would like to think I played at least a little bit of that, right? But anyway,
Yeah.
Lee, I appreciate you for joining us. You had a lot of great insights. Once again, I follow your work, and I appreciate you educating people on China. Any last thoughts? Anything you want to plug? Any work you have coming up? Any last thoughts do you have, Lee, before you wrap up?
I think because, the US media or some politicians keep trying to portray Chinese are your enemies, or Arabs are your enemies, North Koreans are your enemies, everybody else is your enemies. So you thought all the miseries in your life is caused by Chinese or Arabs. You forgot to focus on the real people who are making your life, who make you suffering. It's some of the ruling elites, the billionaires, who've been taking advantage of you. So that's their strategy. But like, if you look at, say, Chinese people, I'm Chinese, so I can speak for Chinese people to some extent. For example, what we have been doing the past few years is just focusing on developing ourselves. It's not taking advantage of US people. That doesn't help us. I come from a very ordinary farmer background of Chinese family. And many people just like me, but in the past 3 decades, we are very fortunate that I have the opportunity to get higher education, to have a good job, to change our fate. Many of the astronauts of China who went to China space station come from a rural family, but they got a PhD, and they, became the first ever astronaut. So many of the Chinese people who made great contributions just come from ordinary family backgrounds. Rural backgrounds, farmer backgrounds. Why that could happen? Because China's government has been focusing on investing on its people, providing compulsory educations for like 9 years for the majority of China, providing 15 compulsory education for students in Tibet, in Xinjiang, because they were remote, they had less resources, and there are a lot of ethnic minorities living there. So to make sure they can play in the same level playing ground, China's like, you know what? We give you more years of free education, meals included, nutritious meal included. You don't need to pay any tuition fees, and you get extra scores in the college entrance exam, so you can compete with the other students who live in the economically developed regions such as Shanghai and Zhejiang. So that's been happening the past 4 decades. On time. So now you're seeing the results. Those young people, those educated young people, are building the railways, building the infrastructures. They are becoming astronauts. And DeepSeek, the AI technology, China-made AI technology, shocked the entire AI world. And they developed a much better AI with a much lower cost. All those scientists, engineers were homegrown talents. They didn't study in the US. They didn't study in Europe. They studied in Chinese universities. And they are able to develop better AI under the chip sanctions from the United States, immediately they're using older chips with less cost, achieve the like same if not better results. So you're seeing the results popping up now. So you need to be able to willing to spend that much effort and money in the people, in the economy, in developing infrastructure. So we have the e-commerce. Because of the roads, we can deliver all the products from online shops to everywhere, to every village, every household in the mountains. So because of the infrastructure, electricity, every household is connected with electricity. So even farmers, even like herdsmen in the wild can use a cell phone, connect to 5G and ordering something and sell their products to the internet. So I mean, so all those investments are not in vain. China spent like decades not seeing the outcome. They are very patient because they know we're gonna see the long-term results, and we are seeing the long-term results now. So that's what I'm like trying. I know it's a long ending statement, but I think that's what made China successful, and a lot of people can learn from that.
Yeah, it was perfect. It was great having you on. Hopefully, we can have you back on again for another China update. Very informative. Thank you for joining us once again, Lee. I appreciate everyone for watching. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the very informative segment in here. I do want to shout this out. Very excited for this. Me and Rome, we are teaming up with the chairman, Fred Hampton himself. We have a giant mutual aid event that we were planning this Chicago. So make sure you guys check out Tour for the Poor. I know we had a big fundraising day. We are rebuilding RBN mutual aid infrastructure and pairing up with the chairman, Fred Hampton Jr. I'm very excited. I'm going to be in Chicago. I'm not going to miss this. I might give a speech. I think we're planning to give speeches too, so it's going to be very exciting. So make sure you guys donate. Make sure you guys check out Lee Jingjing on Twitter. She does a lot of great work on China. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great night, y'all. Peace out, y'all.